Here's your business podcast with Frank Furness.
Right, so you're listening right now and you're most probably saying, well, this sounds good so far, but how's it going to specifically help me sell? What is it going to do to make me close more sales, help me earn more money? Well, right now we're going to start speaking about the actual sales cycle. And it doesn't matter what you sell, the sales cycle is exactly the same. Firstly, you've got a prospect. You've got to have somebody that you're going to sell to. A lot of the times you've got to telephone them. You've got to get yourself into the right state to phone. You've got to know what to say, how to overcome objections. The next thing is you go and you're meeting somebody for the first time. How do you develop rapport? What kind of small talk do you use? How do you develop the relationship? Because people only buy from people that they like and they trust most of the time. The next thing is questioning. How good are you at questioning and listening? After that comes presenting the right presentation, the right solution. And the best salespeople don't sell products or services, they sell solutions. So how do you come up with the right solution? The next part of the sales cycle is closing the sale. And if you've done everything right, it's just a natural progression and the sale is pretty easy. It's where you've done something wrong that the next step comes in, and that's overcoming objections. So those are all of the parts to the sales cycle. But I think before we even get into the sales cycle, if we look at how NLP has an impact on sales, we speak a lot about state and rapport. And this is relevant to every part of the sales cycle. So Ian, tell us a little bit more about state and rapport and how this has an impact on us.
Gosh, where to begin? State and rapport are the two biggest single words you need to know if you're going to be great at using NLP for sales, because everything pretty much depends on those two things. I'll start off by defining my terms. State in NLP isn't California, although that is the state that it started in. State means a link between two things, a link between what you're thinking in your mind and what you're feeling in your body. So states can be positive, states can be negative, and there's loads of them when we experience them every minute of the day. So, for example, examples of positive states would be curiosity. Have you ever really wanted to know something, or have you really wanted to find out something? Your brain is doing something with your thinking, but curiosity has a physiology to it as well. The eyes tend to open up a little bit more, you lean forward a little bit more. If you're a salesperson, you've probably had prospects, well, I hope you've had prospects that have been really curious. They're leaning forward. They're saying, I want to know about that. And their voice tonality changes. They go, hey, I really want to know about that thing. Not that, but that thing there. I want to know. Tell me about that. I want to know. And it's a great state for you to have as in a prospect. In fact, frankly, it's probably might be the number one state you want in a prospect. Another positive state for you to have would be empowerment. That feeling of, hey, I did that. You just got a deal. How do you feel when you just got a deal? You've been working on a prospect for goodness knows how long, and all of a sudden they've signed it, they say you've got a deal, they shake your hand, you walk out of their office. How do you feel? Your thoughts are very positive. Wow, great, brilliant, did it. And your physiology, you're standing like a couple of inches taller and you're walking on air and you're feeling great. Your body's changed as well as your thoughts. So that's curiosity, that's empowerment. What else? Calm. Being calm and composed, that's another positive state. Those are positive states, and there's a long list of those, by the way. Next are negative states. Panic. If somebody's panicky, they have panicky thoughts, and their whole physiology becomes panicky. Depression. If somebody's having a really bad day, their thoughts are depressed and their physiology is depressed. Their shoulders are down, their face is down, crying even if it's an extreme one. So these are all negative states, and one of the biggest jobs you've got as a salesperson is managing state. And there's two sides to it. As a salesperson, you manage the state of your prospect. Think about that for a moment. This is an incredible idea. As a salesperson, you are not really about talking, listening, explaining, showing brochures, reading from a script. All of those things are completely secondary to the fundamental job of changing the state of your prospect.
And now it's time for a word from our sponsor, so listen up.
Hey, yes, it's me back again, Frank. I'm your sponsor, and I want to tell you about a series I've put together. It's actually been 2 years in the making. I have created the biggest online course for financial advisors. If you go and take a look at www.nlp, www.salesstrategiesforadvisors.com. salesstrategiesforadvisors.com. Please go and take a look at our sales page there. You'll see the course has 281 videos, 106 audios, 12 ebooks, and 7 sets of scripts. And I promise you, you will make 10 times your investment at least in this course. There are so many ideas, every kind of strategy you can think of, new things added all the time. And for actually listening to the podcast, you can actually get 50% off the course. Please don't tell anyone about it. But if you go in to the checkout where it says coupon code, all you do is type in 50OFF50 off, and you will immediately get a 50% off the course on the one-off payment. Or, of course, you can opt to pay $29 a month. So, hey, this is Frank. I look forward to seeing you the other side and enjoying my online course. And now, let's get back to our recording.
NLP is exciting because NLP gives you a how-to. It gives you a package of ideas. So you're getting the state in your prospect that you want, when you want it, to the degree you want it. You want them to be curious at the moment you want them to be curious. You've got them excited at the moment you want them to be excited. You've got them calm and listening when you want them to be calm and listening. And if you're going to use NLP for excellence in sales, and I strongly recommend that you will, by the way, and that is to think of yourself more as being a state manager than a salesperson. What state do I want my prospect to be having? Equally, the other side of this coin, of the two sides with state management, is managing your own state. Trust me on this one. Prospects do not want to buy from salespeople who have got the wrong state. Now, depending on who the prospect is and where they're at, that might be a variety of different states. But a good general one is most prospects do not want to buy from somebody who's jittery and fidgety and lacking in concentration. Why? Because unconsciously it sends the signal to the prospect, well, maybe consciously, that you don't know what you're talking about, you don't instill in them confidence that they're going to be making a good buying decision. So if you can manage your own state, it's just incredible what you can do.
Haven't we seen that before as well, when sometimes people are going through a little lull in sales, things aren't going too well, and they're desperate. And people say you can almost smell that desperation because it's in their physiology and everything when they go into the sale. Yeah,
I mean, if in a sense, a lot of people talk about enthusiasm in selling, and it's a really big subject, and it's often misunderstood. Let's unpackage this word enthusiasm, because some people, they can be so kind of high energy and bouncing off the walls that they actually come across not as enthusiastic. They come across as desperate or even panicky. So it's a question of getting the right state. The other thing is to understand, what are you going to do that's going to instill the right state in the prospect? Because as you cover NLP, and since I keep repeating this point, NLP is not about what, it's about how. So now you know the what is change the state of the prospect. Then people say to me, okay, Ian, that's great, but how am I going to do that? And there's a whole bunch of NLP ideas for that, which we'll be covering out throughout this program. The starting point is just intellectually knowing that you can. You can change your prospect state. You can change your state. And the first thing about understanding that state change is possible for you is to know that you can have any state, any minute of any day. I'm going to repeat that because it's a big one. You can have any state, any minute of the day from the point of view of biology. You can be high energy, low energy, curious, quiet, calm, almost, not quite, but almost instantly. Now, whether you do or not's another thing. You might have beliefs or ideas, or it might not always be appropriate, by the way. But the thing is that you can change your state. And if you want to change the state of your prospect, I've given you the first tip, and that is just know that you can. The second is, if you want to change the state of your prospect, you change your state. If you're connected with them, if you're in rapport with them, then you'll be changing their state as well. Which brings us on to rapport. If I was to talk about the times where I've managed to increase sales dramatically, one of the biggest things that's made that happen, one way or another, it's been about rapport. If you can have rapport with somebody, What you're doing is you're making a connection with them. And the most powerful kind of rapport is the rapport where they're not even aware of why it's working. One of the big things in NLP is using unconscious stuff as well as conscious stuff. Now, this might sound esoteric, but it's actually very basic and very practical. Unconscious stuff is just stuff that's going on between people that they're not consciously thinking about. So, for example, you might have had this happen. You've met somebody, you have a chit-chat, and after 5 or 10 minutes you leave them, and somebody said, "Oh, how did you get on with so-and-so?" You say, "Well, I thought they were a great person." You say, "Well, why? What was it about them that made you think they were a great person?" And if the person says, "I don't know, I just felt good being with them," well, what they're saying is they picked up signals, but they just weren't aware of exactly what it was. It wasn't that they had a certain haircut or a certain kind of clothes or they had a certain tone of voice. They said there was something going on, but I just wasn't consciously aware of it. That is rapport, and that's powerful rapport because it's unconscious. There are various definitions for rapport, and I'm going to cover a few of them. The one that I like particularly is, and I'll use an example, have you ever been to a party or a meeting or a conference? You meet somebody for the first time. You talk to them for 5 minutes, or they talk and you talk for 5 minutes. You feel comfortable being with them. In fact, you feel like you've known them a long time. You feel like you've known them for a lot longer than 5, a bit like you and me, Frank, actually. You know, we met for the first time, but we both felt that we'd known each other for, after half an hour of chatting, we felt we'd known each other for longer than half an hour. That's rapport.
Absolutely.
And if you get it to the extreme, you might have talked to somebody for half an hour and you feel like you've known them your entire life. That's a lot of rapport. In fact, I think that's about as much rapport as you can get. We have this thing in sales, in the sales cycle, called a closing ratio. We call it a closing ratio, but in actuality, it's, in my opinion, something else. It's a number which tells you how good your rapport skills are. If your closing ratio is a high percentage, like 50, 60, my last batch of business with my engineering work, it was 80%, by the way. That says that rapport is very, very high. If your closing ratio is 1%, well, you got a simple choice. Either you make a heck of a lot of presentations to hit your sales numbers, or you start learning NLP to build your rapport skills and get that number up. So instead of being 1%, depending on what business you're in, 5%, 10%, I don't know what the norm is. So if you can build your rapport skills, then you can have a huge amount more success and fun. And oh, by the way, you go home at the end of the day a lot less tired if you have rapport skills.
That sounds absolutely fantastic, Ian. So now we're going to have a look at how we can apply that to each section of the sales process.